Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dov Ben-Shimon, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of our Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, the largest Jewish philanthropy in New Jersey, serving our synagogues, agencies, and community buildings across the area and connecting us to Israel. I want to say how deeply grateful I am for each and every one of you with us on the Zoom today, for all those of you who have attended events, come to meetings, donated to the Emergency Fund for Israel. This means a lot. It means that we stand together as a community in the worst possible time imaginable. And I think that we are stronger together because of that. We're here for a special briefing with Alon Ben-David, whom I will have the honor of introducing in just a couple of moments. But first, I've been asked to share with you a little about my visit last week to our partners and friends in Israel and a few quick overall reflections. I was in Israel last week for a very short amount of time and spent one day with our partners evacuated from Kibbutz Erez, then Merchavim, and then Ofakim. In each of those locations, with the Erez residents being evacuated to Mitzpeh Ramon, I sat with leaders and community members, made condolence visits, and articulated the love and solidarity that we as a Greater Metro West community have for them. And notwithstanding my initial hesitation that my presence could have been a burden on their time and focus, I very quickly saw that it was, in fact, very much the opposite. They wanted me there, and they actually needed the love and hugs and support that I was honored to give as a representative of our New Jersey Jewish community. I know that Alon will go deep into the military and strategic side of this, so I want to focus for 2 minutes on the social and partnership side. As I've told some of you on this Zoom in previous meetings this past few days, I've been involved as a career professional for Jewish communal service in Israel for 35 years now. And I've generally shied away from any and all Nazi and Holocaust analogies and metaphors. And yet, I have nothing else but that to begin to understand the depth of cruelty, evil, and barbarism that we saw on October the 7th. But more than that, in the conversations that I had the other day with families of hostages, evacuated Israelis, wounded soldiers, and more, there were another of other concepts that pull me back to the Shoah, the Holocaust, more specifically in terms of survivor guilt and the massive, immense mental health trauma burden that we're going to see affecting and impacting hundreds of thousands of Israelis for years and years to come. There is absolute physical devastation, but also mental and spiritual loss that will never be recovered. There are kibbutzim and villages that people will never, can never return to. So that's one aspect. The other point I want to reinforce, and I saw this very clearly, and I hope that you are seeing elements of this when you read and watch what's happening in Israel right now, is the return, the rise of civic society and what we call Eretz Yisrael Yafa, the beautiful Israel these past few weeks. The incredible pivot of the protest movements, for example, people like Achim Leneshek, brothers and sisters in arms, and many others who, on a moment's notice, shifted all their focus and tremendous logistical capacity from protesting the government's legal reform plans to organizing volunteers in every aspect of support. It's been truly amazing and inspiring to see. So that's a lot. And I want to emphasize again that we get to support these things because we're a strong, generous, and philanthropic Jewish community, and for that, I'm grateful. A quick programming and logistics note, we're going to ask Alon to give an overall introduction for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to ask him a whole round of questions. You can send your questions to me using the chat or the Q&A buttons, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Alon Ben-David, the senior defense correspondent for Israel's Channel 13. He specializes in defense and military issues and will share his analysis as Israel faces this crisis. Welcome, Alon, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Dov, and thank you all truly for your interest and your support. And this is really a time of need that I never thought I would live to see such time of need. I'll give you a short briefing of where we stand right now, and I will expand on issues that will interest you more according to the questions. We are ending the 19th day of fighting with continuous bombing of Gaza, which has inflicted considerable damage on Hamas, but is not starting to approach the declared goal of eliminating Hamas as a threat. Now, our cabinet has just ended their meeting. I didn't hear exactly what was decided there, But one thing that was on the table was how much time to give the efforts for another exchange of prisoners or kidnapped people from Gaza, with the Qatari proposal that they can promote this issue more. One thing that we made clear to the Qataris is that we won't accept small, minor deals of 2 here and 2 there in order to delay our military maneuver into Gaza, but we want a major deal. All of the kids, all of the elders, if they want to, all of those with another citizenship, but we won't accept, or we won't play the game of Hamas releasing 2 prisoners every 2 days, and by that delaying our military maneuver into Gaza. So I'm not sure if they've decided on a deadline, but I think one would be declared in the coming hours, basically saying that by the end of the week, if there's no major deal, we are going to go to phase 2 of our fighting into Gaza, which means sending our ground troops and forces into Gaza, beginning a ground maneuver, which is going to be long. It's not a swift operation. You remember your government, when it fought ISIS, said degrade and destroy. It was a long campaign of degrading and eventually destroying the Islamic State. That's what we're aiming at right now, because there's a clear understanding that we, Israel, will not be able to exist as long as Hamas is a potent military and sovereign force in the region, because the whole region is watching, and our main concern is the north. Now, your administration, to say it openly, saved us when they stepped in on the 3rd day of the war, when we were that close to launching a preemptive strike on Lebanon and opening another front, which has a much greater military potential. And by you sending your aircraft carrier strike groups and troops into the area, and basically telling Israel, don't worry about Lebanon, because if Lebanon is going to start something against you, Iran is going to have a deal with me. And that basically kind of froze the situation on the northern border, where we have constant daily friction to a certain level, which is still along the border and is not expanding southward into our deep rear in Israel. And we hope to keep it that way. We expect that when we begin the ground maneuver, we will see Hezbollah stepping up its efforts to strike Israel. And we will see how much we can contain that without opening another front. Now, our military is extremely stretched. Yes, we have mobilized 350,000 reservists. Now, I visit those troops every day. I have to tell you, it's like a quick charger. You know, every day I'm stepping into one of those units. It's like my battery is being charged dramatically by the energy, by the determination, by the understanding of people that we are fighting for our existence. And what Dov said, yeah, I also do not like the comparison and the analogy to Shoah, to the Holocaust. But what we saw on the Black Saturday came as close as we could ever imagine. You know, we've seen the people that participated in the party, in the techno party. You know, at some point when they realized that there are so many people there, they practically lined them up, shot them in lines, piled them. We found a pile of 260 human bodies. They torched the pile, by the way. That's what makes the recognition and identification of the body so problematic. But this is something that we swore 80 years ago would never happen again, and it did. And we need right now to destroy Hamas. And I'll tell you something which you might not like. Our problem is not only Hamas. I know that the narrative that is dominating the discourse right now basically phrased by the EU administration as that the problem is Hamas. After 1,500 combatants of Hamas marched into Israel and started the massacre, 2,000 civilians from Gaza followed them, not Hamas, civilians. Didn't come just to steal. You know, they could steal the agricultural equipment, the cars, the tractors. No, they butchered, they slaughtered, they raped, and they grabbed and snatched their own hostages. So now we have hostages among the 222. We have hostages who are being held as private hostages by some of the clans in Gaza. We have a problem with Gaza. And if we want people of the Gaza envelope to come back to live in their communities, we need to guarantee them, first of all, that there's no Gazan living in proximity to them. And second, that there's no military force on the other side that could pose a threat. And after doing that, at some point, we will have to do the same thing in the north, because if we want the people of Kiryat Shmona, Metula, and Shlomi to go back to their homes, and right now we have 200,000 Israelis displaced. If we want those people to go back, we will have to remove that threat. So we are going into a campaign like we've never experienced, basically understanding that we cannot coexist next to that kind of neighbors. And we need to move these neighbors away from us in order us to be able to put our kids to bed, knowing that no one is going to enter their bedroom at night. So that's where we're at right now. I've been as general as I could, but Dov, direct me to what you want to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm taking notes. And thank you for those of you at home who are starting to send on my cell phone, but also on the chat and in the Q&A too. We'll try to get some of those questions. I want to start with the big picture that we're seeing a lot from some of the political commentators here, which is very interesting, which is talking about how Israel's strategic position may have been weakened dramatically since October the 7th. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? What does Israel's strategic position now look like in terms of how its neighbors and potential enemies are looking at Israel's security today?
You know, our current IDF chief of staff took office in November. And when he took office, all the strategic presentations that were given to him always had the bullet: Israel's strategic posture in the region is stable. It projects power across the region. And it started to erode as this government took office. And it eroded in a way that our intelligence branch, without underestimating their failure in warning on the attack, the intelligence branch released 4 documents saying this is a strategic warning. The way Israel is perceived in the region, torn in internal strife, people are at each other, dealing with itself without looking around, is a strategic opportunity for us to realize the prophecy of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, that Israel will be erased from the map by 2040, and we can have it earlier. And the prime minister was warned 4 times by the intelligence branch that this is how we are perceived in the region. The chief of staff begged the prime minister to listen before going for the first vote on the judicial reform, to hear him and listen to his warnings that this vote is going to jeopardize Israel's position in the region. He refused to meet him. Our defense minister came out on public in March saying that this is harming Israel's security. He was fired that night, and the prime minister was forced to bring him back. So there's a clear connection. The neighborhood was watching us, tearing ourselves apart, and realized that this is a ripe time to launch a strike that would accelerate the process.
So let's flip that positive maybe for a second, because you talked about this, and I saw this the other day in the South when I was talking with reservist soldiers, and I saw a level of unity of purpose and determination and high morale that I haven't seen in the public discourse in Israel for many years. And I'm wondering if you think this is a sea change. I appreciate you're a political and military commentator, but you're also the smartest person I know on Israeli television. I watch you all the time. So I figure you've got an opinion. So are we seeing a sea change in Israeli sociology because, you know, we're now attacked from outside and we have this sense of national unity? Do you think there's a change here now?
I believe that, you know, what I'm seeing in the reserve units is 120% of the people are reporting. All the reserve units have more people than they need, have more people than the equipment that they have. Everybody jumped out of their homes, left their families, left their jobs, left their businesses, jumped, put on uniform, and went there because they are realizing that we are fighting for our mere existence here. This is not a round of violence. This is not another operation in Gaza. This will determine whether we can survive in this hostile neighborhood for the next generation. Because if we won't have a decisive outcome of the Gaza campaign, we are in trouble all over. Many, many hostile people are watching us from the neighborhood and believing that there's an opportunity here to accelerate Israel's collapse, and they want to take a shot at that. So Israelis understand that. And, you know, 350,000 people are mobilized for 18 days now. It's not easy. But what they are asking me is to tell their government to let them do the job. And I see some hesitance in my government. We have a presence of several American generals in our among our top brass. Those generals are extremely experienced in urban warfare. They all have great experience from Iraq mostly, but they are here not only in support and showing strength. I think they're here because your administration is detecting weakness in Israel. So I do hope that our leadership will have the stamina to lead us through that and reach our goal, which can't be other than total destruction of Hamas as a ruling and military force in Gaza. We cannot compromise on anything less than that, because if Hamas will stay as a smaller military power, no one will go back to live in the Gaza envelope.
All right, we got a bunch of really great shorter questions, and then we got a really hard big one. So let's try and do the short ones first. How big is Hamas in Gaza? And can you describe the size of Hamas in rough numbers of people and targets?
In terms of combatants, we are talking about 30,000 militants, out of which I believe we were able to kill about 2,000. In terms of rocket power, they've entered this campaign with about 20,000. They have fired 6,000 so far. We have destroyed a few more thousand, but they have enough ammunition to continue for days. You know, they are harassing the Israeli rear. They're not launching massive barrages, but they are harassing the civilian rear. One time in Tel Aviv, one time in Ashdod, one time in Be'er Sheva, one time in Ashkelon. So it's mostly an harassment. The damage is not that terrible. And you know what? Most Israelis feel quite secure with Iron Dome protecting them. On top of those Hamas operatives, we have about 10,000 Islamic Jihad militants with a firepower of about 10,000 rockets. This is not a force which is a match to the IDF. The IDF and the way it's mobilized, and I visit every day the brigades that are about to go into Gaza. I guarantee you there's no Hamas brigade who's capable of stopping an IDF armored brigade which is progressing. Yes, they can harass, they can make us bleed, they can claim a price from us. They cannot stop us. So what I hope is, and I'm not trigger happy here. I know there will be a price for this campaign, but what's at stake here is the future of the Israeli civilization of 10 million people living in Israel and their future and ability to continue and exist here. So yes, there are many risks in going into Gaza, but we need to be determined because we really have no choice. And there are moments in a nation's life when you aim for a decisive outcome, victory, and no less than that. That's where we're aiming.
All right, this is a great question. It's not a yes/no question. Can the tunnels be destroyed without a ground invasion?
No, we can destroy some tunnels that we know about. And if you're following the news daily, as we started doing that tonight, basically signaling Hamas that we are preparing the ground maneuver and started destroying some of their tunnels. I need to describe that to you. I had a glimpse of that in the last Operation Protective Edge in 2014. We are talking about a whole underground city. It has several boulevards, which are very wide. Trucks can drive through. Then from the boulevards, you have streets coming out. And along those streets, you have rooms. This is a communication room. This is an electric room. This is a restroom. This is a living room. All kinds of room, command post. And from the streets, you have alleys going out. So we won't be able to deal with the alleys and not with the streets. We will have to deal with the boulevards where Hamas leadership is staying right now, because one achievement that we cannot compromise on is eliminating Hamas leadership. And they right now are staying underneath a hospital in Gaza. The ventilation system of the metro, of the Gaza metro, is connected to all the hospitals in Gaza. So basically what they did, they connected their ventilation system to the hospital, knowing that we won't stop the power to the hospital, and that would guarantee that they would have ventilation in the tunnels. At some point, yes, we will have to take over some hospitals. Now, out of 13 hospitals in the northern Gaza Strip, 3 agreed to evacuate to the southern part. We are urging the remaining 10 to evacuate as well. Some of them will stay. And we will have to send our troops to fight there, because that's where Hamas leadership is. And yes, we will have to kill them in the tunnels by reaching those tunnels and destroying the tunnels on them. Tough fighting, very tough fighting. But as I said, no choice.
All right. All right, we got several versions of the same question, so I'm going to try and condense them into one. And again, I appreciate this is a political question, and please remember, everybody, Jewish federations don't take partisan stances. Do you think the Netanyahu government will pay a political price for the Mihdal, for the failure in anticipating the October 7th attack?
I can't imagine any other scenario. You know, we have a prime minister that cannot visit the families of the fallen. He cannot visit the hospitals because he's going to be kicked out. He cannot go around anywhere. He's going only into sterile areas because of the public rage against him. So this is not a way to run a war. You know, he's no Churchill. He cannot stop his car and go and have a conversation with the average voter in the underground like Churchill did. No way. The other side of that is that I'm not sure he's sensing the sentiment among the people, because he's wrapped with several layers, and I'm not sure he understands the depth of the rage and the hard sentiment against him in the public sphere, because he has no friction with the public sphere. I suspect that nobody who bears responsibility for the horrible failure of October 7th will be able to maintain their office. You know, In one day, Hamas did what 9 armored divisions of the Egyptian army didn't do on October 6, 1973. Hamas killed more Israelis than 9 Egyptian armored division on October 6, 1973. And anybody that bears responsibility, and him being in power for 15 years, I don't think they can stay in office.
Okay. We got a bunch of questions that are all essentially asking, what does success look like? How do you define victory? What kind of a buffer zone would be after? And then I want to wrap it up with one really good question. Thank you, Maxine. Many years ago, I asked you what Gaza and the West Bank would look like as one state. You responded, perhaps there could be 3 states. Do you still think that's a possibility? So success, the future, what does success look like, and what does the end result to you look like, or is there an end result?
Okay. Imagine, I don't know if you remember Defensive Shield, the operation that we launched into the West Bank in 2002, once after we have suffered more than 1,000 casualties from Palestinian suicide terrorism. We went into the West Bank, we have reoccupied cities in the West Bank, we have created conditions for freedom of operations to our military. Withdrew from the cities, but kept launching operations into those cities for 3 years. It took us 3 years to suppress Palestinian suicide terrorism. We are basically looking on a different scale at something similar in Gaza. We will have to go into Gaza, destroy as much Hamas military and political infrastructure as we can, understanding that we won't be able to eliminate it completely. The idea would still live, people would stay, and then we will have to continue launching smaller operations into Gaza to make sure that anything that grows as Hamas, we will chop it down. We will mow it constantly until the lawn won't require any more mowing, like we did in the West Bank. And we will establish a perimeter which is going to be about 1 to 2 miles wide along our border, guaranteeing that there's this security perimeter that stands between our communities and the Gaza people, and the military is in between. So our communities will no longer be a frontier community. The frontier will move into Gaza. And when I'm saying 2 miles perimeter, I'm talking about 20 to 25% of Gaza Strip territory. Yes, they will have to squeeze in the remaining area, and we have not designed or completely thought through the kind of mechanism that would rule them afterwards. We would love to have solutions that will bring more nations to assume responsibility and at least, first of all, take humanitarian care of these people. But we haven't thought it through yet, and we need to. I mean, your administration requires that from us, and we need to come back with answers. But a victory would look like when Hamas is no longer there, not as political leader or ruler, and not as a military force. And that would take time. That would take a lot of time.
So we've got a couple of questions about Hasbara and explaining to people about what is happening and the challenges. So I think I want to divide this up into 2 parts. One is, what do you think the role, especially the American Jewish community, can be in helping Israel right now, especially as we probably move to a land attack? And also, there was a conversation that several Israeli strategic analysts had a couple of 2 weeks ago that you touched on when you talked about the thousands of Gazan civilians who moved in and raped and killed and kidnapped. And these analysts were talking about what happened in Germany after the Second World War with the denazification programs that looked at civilians. So I want to take those two together and talk about the difference between Hamas and Gaza, and the explanation, especially from our side, about what this conflict is, quote unquote, about. How can we be helpful, and what should we be aware of in that sense?
I think you need to understand that Hamas is not an alien force that landed in Gaza and took over the pure hearts and minds of the innocent Gaza people. Hamas is a genuine creation of the Gaza society. It grew out of the Gaza society. It has roots all over Gaza. There isn't a single family in Gaza that doesn't touch Hamas. So Hamas is their own genuine creation. You know, in their eyes, they were more decent rulers than the Fatah that preceded them. Because yes, they are corrupt as well, but in the eyes of the Gazans, you know, they gave something back. They built a mosque, they built a club for the elders, they built a gym for the youth. They gave something back. And our problem, yes, is with Gaza. And it's hard to say because I belong to those people who believed that we could coexist and who believed that if we'll offer them a chance for a better future, they would go along. But I was wrong. I was wrong. I strongly believed that. I strongly believed that most of them want their kids to prosper and flourish like we want our kids to live a better life than ours. Apparently they're not. I'm not saying that the whole of the Gazan people are like that, but a big chunk of Gaza people are like that, and we cannot be neighbors. We need to have clear separation from them. So what we need you to explain and keep reminding the world is why we fight. Their brutality resembles a lot, you know, if not going to the Holocaust analogies, resembles a lot what the Japanese did to the nations that they occupied in World War II. The same brutality, the same barbarism, and no touch of morality at all. And when your nation was attacked in Pearl Harbor, you said, we are going out to destroy the Japanese empire. We don't know what kind of regime structure would replace that. We're not sure who's going to govern the Japanese after. But first of all, we're going to destroy them as a nation and as a fighting force. And you drop 2 nuclear bombs on the Japanese to accelerate their surrender. That's where we are today. We won't drop nuclear bombs on that. But we realize that this is something we cannot live next to. And I want, you know, if we will not eliminate Hamas, it's not only about the people in the Gaza envelope. And it's not only about the people living in the northern border. It's here in Tel Aviv. I won't be able to put my kids to bed if I will have the fear that someone from Kalkilia, which is what, 10 minutes drive at this time of night, could show up at their bedroom. I cannot put them to sleep like that and sleep quietly. I have no choice. I'm not seeking wars. I don't want conflicts. I'm, you know, those of you who've heard me before, I'm a very moderate man, but we have just no choice. If we won't make a model of Gaza to what is the outcome for someone who is attacking us in such brutality, we will not be able to stay here. We could start packing. So we are just forced to.
I think that's a message of moral and ethical clarity that people need to hear. And for those of you who are watching us now, and I'm deeply appreciative for so many of you who are watching, we are recording this and we'll figure out a way to share it so that we encourage you to share that message specifically that Alon just made. I know that we have about 2 to 3 minutes left, so I'm going to give you one final question, which again is a package deal of several questions that we're being asked. And thank you all for your questions today. They are absolutely spot on and really helpful. I met with hostage families the other day and heard them articulate the worry that the military attack would not take into consideration, to the extent that they wanted, the potential danger to the hostages in the tunnels. So I think the question that I want to ask you is, can you unpack that a little bit? If, for example, if Hamas knows that Israel's goal is Hamas's elimination, what can be negotiated with them, if anything? And assuming the hostages are spread out through these tunnels and elsewhere, how can the ground forces enter tunnels without egregious losses, both for the soldiers, but also for the hostages?
This is the the most troublesome question of all. You know, our hearts are bleeding, really, all of us. This is one incident in which I don't think there is a single Israeli who wasn't touched by this tragedy in one of the circles around them. And for me, it was in multiple circles. I've been to 5 shivas on the first week. It was unbelievable. I have friends with kidnapped relatives. Clearly, once we will start the ground maneuver, the window of opportunities to negotiate with Hamas on the prisoners and kidnap people would start to close. And we understand it. However, we cannot play by Hamas rules and endlessly postpone our attack, because they will keep dropping us one hostage, another one, 2 more. That we cannot do. So tonight, I think in the cabinet, I don't know what was the outcome, but I know that the idea is saying, look, if they are ready for a mega deal in which we are going to get all of them, you know what, let's release their prisoners. Yes, we have 6,000 prisoners, pour them all into Gaza, and, you know, if it happens, we might kill them after, but pour them all into Gaza. No one will go to the West Bank. No one will be able to kill us from the West Bank. I will pour them all into Gaza. But if that's what they want, it's a fair price for saving those poor 222 Israelis, kids, elders, babies, teenage, whatever. Once we go in, and with the limitations of this conversation being recorded, we have information about some of the hostages. We are without information about some. Our ground maneuver and aerial strikes are taking into account the whereabouts of those that we know about. So our Air Force will not bomb a place or a tunnel where we know our prisoners are being held. And our military, once they will start their ground maneuver, on the sides of the major maneuver, there'll be forces whose aim would be to release those prisoners. Dedicated forces with the mission of saving as many hostages as possible. So, I wish I could tell you we would see the whole 222 back. By the way, when I'm saying 222, some of them are not living. They are not all living, but this is not a final number, because we have another about 100 Israelis who are disconnected. Their remains weren't found or identified yet. So the number could go up. And I estimate that we will reach a number of about 250, if not more. I wish we could save them all. But as I said, right now we are fighting to save the existence of 10 million Israelis. And we have paid already an enormous, unbearable price of close to 1,500 Israelis being murdered on that Saturday. And we'll try to minimize the price that we're going to pay from now on, but no one can guarantee we could secure the return of all of them. We will give that window of opportunity, I'd say, no more than 2-3 days, and then we'll have to fight and wish for the best.
I would like to have you on for another 4 or 5 hours, because every time I watch you, I learn so much more from you for years. But we will have you back on again, because I know that you have visited our community and we have learned from you, and I'm deeply grateful. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. It's my pleasure, to thank you again, Alon, and also to welcome our UJA Jewish Federation campaign chair, Michelle Landau, to finish our Zoom today.
Thank you so much, Alon and Dov, for your insightful remarks. We must hold on to these stories so that we can continue to share and stand in solidarity with all of Israel. We need to make sure everyone knows what the truth is. As Dov said, my name is Michelle Landau. I am the UJA campaign chair for our Jewish Federation. My focus is on doing everything we can to support our sisters and brothers in Israel. It gives me hope to see our community coming together each week in support of Israel and the impact Federation is having on the response to the war that we are facing. I ask that you take what you have heard and consider doing more. We are facing a tsunami of needs. Alon said that from the beginning. The needs are endless, and this is far from over. If you have been feeling helpless and not sure how you can change anything, we have some powerful tools at our disposal. The UJA annual campaign is the backbone of our community. It is the vehicle that has enabled us to establish an infrastructure of support to our partners locally and abroad for a century. The initial $1 million that we sent without any hesitation to our partners in Israel was only made possible because every year we raise and set aside funds for the needs we just don't know anything about. We are always prepared to respond because of our generous and committed community of supporters. It is the UJA annual campaign that also ensures that we have a vibrant and secure Jewish community right here in Greater Metro West. In addition to our annual campaign, we have established the Emergency Fund for Israel. And to date, our community has raised more than $25 million. In addition, these are additional dollars for the state of Israel. We are sending 100% of these dollars directly and immediately to Israel. As of today, thousands of generous donors have already made their gifts, and we know that there is more to do. Together, the UJA annual campaign and the Emergency Fund for Israel present an opportunity for us to do something about it. We need to dig deep, and we need to support both efforts. I want to thank each of you for caring for Israel and our beloved Jewish community right here at home. I know that together we will do what the coming days will demand of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.